welcome to the Leather Journey. I'm Dex, and tonight we have a real treat. About a year ago, I got very ill with pneumonia, struggled with my health for about 6 months. It took me a while to get back, feeling like my old self and my energy back and my health back on the right track. But during that phase of my journey, I decided I didn't want to leave my leather library, my personal library, to my vanilla relatives to have to figure out what to do with the books. And I didn't want these books to end up in a landfill somewhere. I figured somewhere somebody could benefit from some of the books in my library. And I decided also it would be a nice project to reread the books and do a book review for my YouTube channel. And I've got a slowly growing playlist of books that I've reread, and then once the book's reread, I offer it to the first channel member that raises their hand. Screw the Roses, Send Me the Thorns, that I believe Robert Dante had signed for me the chapter on that he wrote in that book on whips, or the lash. That went to someone in Ohio. I'm currently reading The Loving Dominant by John Warren, and when I get that read, I'm going to offer that up to the first raised hand. Well, Robert Dante thought enough of me to send me a signed copy of his newest book, the Bullwhip, the Dante Method. It's a nice little book, and I was going to do a book review on it. I've read it, and actually read it once, and I've gone back through it and reread certain sections of it. And so I'm going to be offering this book up to my patrons first. And if I don't have a patron that raises their hand and say they want it, then I'll come back on this channel in a future review, and I will offer it to the first raised hand. So keep watching the videos. You may have a chance for a signed free copy of the Bullwhip, the Dante Method by Robert Dante. So Robert Dante is a whip artist, very good whip thrower, whip instructor, has written now 2 books on whips. I think his other book was Let's Get Cracking. And he also is lifestyle friendly, in the life. I would consider him in the lifestyle. He certainly plays in the dungeon when he has opportunity, but he also takes his whips completely into the vanilla world and does vaudeville and Renaissance fairs and whatnots, and he's a whip performer. So he's written a book, The Dante Method, and I promised him I'd do a review. I'm going to let him actually look at the review or have a chance to preview it before we start. But what I'll say about it is it's 53 pages long. It's an easy read. It's laconic. It's a good read. And the goal of this book is to get you cracking whips. And he calls it the Dante Method, but I've been to many whip workshops over the years, and it's really the standard approach for teaching whips, okay? And that is to get you cracking. The very first crack you learn is a circus crack. Now, some people teach a cattleman's crack as the first crack, but really both of those cracks are the same crack. In my book, I describe those as making an S shape, and then they roll out. But it's the easiest crack to learn and actually make the whip cracks. The arm goes up, the arm comes down, the whip cracks. He accurately describes in the book what I've also said in my book, that a circus crack cracks about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way down the thong. And therefore, when you're in dungeon play and you're doing sensation play with someone standing on the other end, that means that crack is going to finish, a foot, maybe 1.5 depending on the length of the whip, away from your target. And it may be the easiest crack to get to crack, but for our purposes in the dungeon, it's probably the last crack you should learn, not the first crack you should learn. So at any rate, but that's the first crack everybody teaches when they're teaching cracking. Then the next crack is an overhand flick. An overhand flick, I think of it just like throwing a baseball or a softball. You bring the whip outside the railroad track and you flick it through. Just like that. The only thing in that section that I would have added was when you flick it through, you want to leave it out. Okay, you leave it out, make sure it stays outside the railroad tracks, but you don't jerk it back towards you. A lot of people will throw the flick, and at the end of the flick, they'll jerk it back toward them, almost like trying to get a towel crack out of it. If you jerk it back towards you, it's going to come back and hit you faster than it went out. So I'm just throwing a little 2-foot snake by Peter Jack. A lot of the instructions in this book are tailored toward basic cracking and sport cracking, and they're making the assumption you're using a longer whip. Like the setup he describes for a lot of his whips, have you start with a whip laying on the ground in front of you. You can't do that with a 2-foot whip. I'm not even sure you can do that with a 4-foot whip, but for a longer whip, that's everything in the book is certainly good. I don't disagree with anything he's written in the book. It's very well written. It's first written from a basic cracking approach to get you cracking your whip. Then there's an extended section on sport cracking. He describes most of the common sport cracks. He's got a little bit on two-handed whips. In the two-handed whip section, the only thing I think that really applies directly to dungeon play is the section on Florentine. Both 2-count and 4-count and 6-count Florentine can be done in dungeon play with whips. So an excellent little book. I highly recommend it. If you want a chance to have a signed copy, then keep watching the channel. And if no one in my patron group, which is possible, I only have 10 patrons, you might consider becoming a patron. I have a lot of information over on my patron site. In fact, the advanced reader copy of my second book, Variations and Vignettes, Advanced Singletail Play, is on my patron site. You might consider joining and becoming a patron and supporting the channel that way. So in reflection, I liked the book. If someone came to me and said, I want to learn how to crack a whip, this would be the book I would recommend. 53 pages, it's going to get them cracking. Takes a standard approach to teaching basic cracking and whips. On my Whips in the Dungeon channel, I'll be comparing this book to the Whips in the Dungeon method. The two books are great. They have different goals. This book is designed to get you cracking your whip. This book is designed to actually get you playing with someone in contact play in the dungeon and exchanging energy. Two completely different goals. There is some overlap. If we were going to do a Venn diagram, there would certainly be some overlap between basic cracking, sport cracking, and throwing in the dungeon. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, ring the bell, consider subscribing, and remember that most of the videos that are truly leather oriented are for channel members only. You might consider becoming a channel member. As always, thanks for watching The Leather Journal.